Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Automate, Quantify, and Scale Your AWS Well-Architected Reviews. My name is Jordan Spires. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Cloudaware. I'll be moderating the session today. We have a pretty engaging conversation that we're going to be having today. As we have some great topics that we're going to be covering, some best practices we'll be going through, and then we're going to be showcasing a demo at the end of this as well. So please be sure to stay on for the entirety of this. If you're joining us today, I'm assuming most of you are partners within the AWS Well-Architected Partner Program. So we can go ahead and skip over what is the well-architected framework and why it's important. But if you don't know, please do check it out because it is pretty fundamental in everything that we're talking about with cloud. So what are we going to talk about today? We want to, since you guys are all partners within the AWS Well-Architected program, here at Cloudaware, we work with AWS with partners of all shapes and sizes. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the common challenges and best practices for maturing and scaling your reviews. We talk a lot about getting from manual to automated, which is obviously a very big, important step. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. But we also want to think a little bit about what's that maturity curve when it comes to well-architected reviews. And yes, getting from manual to automated is so important, but then what happens next? And so what we're going to be talking about here is also from manual to automated, but also then to quantification, and how quantification then is going to lead to scalability for partners like yourselves that will then create a scalable, repeatable business here. That's going to be a win-win for you, the partner, AWS, and of course the customer, right, is most important there. So we'll talk through these common pain points. We have an excellent discussion talking through this maturity curve. And then in the second half, like I said, we will have a demo of the Cloudaware's Well-Architected Scorecard. We can show you a little bit under the hood. And then finally, at the very end, we will have a Q&A. So please do be sure to put in your questions in the Q&A section here on the portal, and we'll answer them as we have time. So that being said, I want to introduce our speakers here. We have two excellent speakers with us today who bring a wealth of expertise to the topic. First, we have Mikhail Malamud, General Manager at Cloudaware, and joining him, we have Brandon Van Quillenberg, Senior Business Manager at AWS Cloud Optimization Services. Thank you both for joining us today. Excited to talk with you. Maybe just to get started, can you both provide just a real quick introduction, who you are, what you do, and what was your journey to the cloud, right? And where your journey in the cloud today. So, Mikhail, I'll kick it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Jordan. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. I really hope that this is going to be an educational experience for you. Also wanted to say thank you to AWS and thank you to Brandon for to be my co-host. And I know you also have your time is quite valuable. I started working with AWS since very early days, like going back to 2007, 2008. And for the last 15 years, I've dedicated my career to helping organizations to achieve a level of operational excellence in the cloud. I've kind of been preaching well-architected framework before it was even called well-architected framework, which is how Cloudaware as a company was born. It was essentially to automate a lot of things that I used to do by hand more than 10 years ago. My professional network would send me referrals and say, hey, Mikhail, this company is like stuck with their AWS adoption, or things are not going well. Can you come in, take a look, see what's going on with their security, with their FinOps? And I used to do those things as a service, and eventually that has grown into Cloudaware as a platform. Today, we work with world's largest consumers of cloud infrastructure and helping them to build mature cloud management programs. And obviously, well-architected review is integral part of that. So that's what I've been doing. I'm very excited to share with you what I've learned, And I hope that that you'll find this interesting.
Awesome. Thanks. How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, thanks, Mikhail. Yeah, Brandon Van Kulenberg here. I run our partner go-to-market for our cloud optimization services team. I started my career in cybersecurity. I sold security to enterprise SMB customers for about seven years. What I noticed in that space is just because an organization they bought agents, they bought cloud security, there was still a best practice that was very important to follow. A lot of the folks who were hit with ransomware phishing attacks, they had security implemented, but they simply didn't have the foundations built for policy delivering and setting up best practices early. So things got through the cracks, even with the top end technologies deployed at their organizations. After that, I joined AWS to kind of build that motion into our partner ecosystem, scaling well-architected best practices and different products or different AWS services at the company. And now we're responsible for delivering, go-to-market for AWS Partners, scaling through well-architected best practices to ultimately help service partners uncover net new opportunities using these best practices. So yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks again.
Awesome. Excited to have you guys here. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started about with the conversation. I do have a couple teed up questions for you guys. We'll keep this a nice flow of topics going through. So we'll try not to keep it too regimented, but to kick things off, Brandon, I want to start with you. So you work with partners of all shapes and sizes within the Well-Architected Partner Program. So as we're talking about that maturity curve of scaling your reviews, let's start in the beginning here, right? Let's talk about if you have any partners here that are just getting started, right? Doing maybe their first reviews. What are some of those early challenges you see that these partners are facing?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, for those who have not actually experienced opening up the well-architected tool and going through the questions, there are around 60 of them that make up, 6 different what we call framework pillars. Inside those pillars, roughly an additional 315 best practice questions. So with that, if you guys have ever built anything from IKEA, you probably know where I'm going with this. There's a lot of steps, a lot of reading, a lot of things to implement that take different personas and builders to go through. So with that, we're seeing traditionally just reviewing those questions out of an Excel file or the well-architected tool are taking companies weeks per workload. So with that, it's very time consuming doing this kind of the old fashioned way, right? It's very tactical driven and it doesn't necessarily grab the entire breadth of business and tech, right? When you just go through these questions. So it takes a lot of time. Our consulting partners are having a lot of hiccups with getting a CTO to sit through there and go through these questions, right? A lot of time consuming constraints is what we're seeing in the market.
Awesome. Yeah, there's some pretty extensive right there to get things started right there. So Mikhail, on the same topic here, as we're working with our partners right now that are building and executing these well-architected reviews, what are some of those pain points that you're really seeing that you can maybe give them a heads up with, and some of the best practices around those aspects of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we kind of mention some of them, there is, every situation can be quite a bit different. But let's sort of begin with is a lot of customers, not everybody, but there is a significant a segment of customers that have large AWS deployments already. It's not uncommon. I every day run into customers with more than 100 AWS accounts and even more than 1,000 AWS accounts. Sometimes it could be after a acquisition or a merger, even multiple AWS organizations. And so customers with this large sprawling environments, they can be very difficult to assess if it's to perform this review because it's just simply a large environment. And if you're not streamlined, that creates friction just to even perform the discovery process and kind of become aware of all the inventory that you have. So that's a challenge number one, large sprawling environments. And kind of in that thrust, I also want to say is that AWS Well-Architected Review is often adjacent to tooling that's outside of AWS, right? If I want to measure a maturity of a company's observability platform, well, maybe they're not just using AWS as observability, maybe they're using also other tools like New Relic or Datadog and things like that. I need to be able to integrate with those tools. So basically, establishing visibility and understanding what's going on with the customer's environment is a challenge. The second challenge is that I often see is kind of like, hey, I don't want to just do a one-time thing, you know, how are we actually going to track improvements and things like that? So customers are interested not just in performing like a one-time review, they want something that's a continuous. And so, and third and last, specifically to MSPs and SIs, you know, a well-architected review is often the very first engagement that you do with a customer in your sales cycle. You obviously don't want to drag this out. You want to lower the threshold for the customer to be able to do this as easy as possible. That means we should be able, as SIs, MSPs, to be able to offer these well-architected reviews at a very attractive price point, right? Because if we get bogged down into negotiations so very early on, then, you know, it's like, it's not a good start. So being able to do them scalably at a low cost, not getting bogged down, is another type of a challenge. So those are kind of three things that the recurring themes that I see.
Awesome, excellent. Yeah, that leads right kind of to actually you covered a little bit of this already. So with the next question here is creating those compelling business cases, right? And so you talked about those initial sales calls that you're having using these tooling with this initial sales assessments right there. I think answers some of that right there in terms of these compelling business cases. But Brandon, I'll kick this back over to you. When we're talking about prioritizing projects and building over these business cases, again, in the early stages, as we're doing these reviews, can you talk a little bit about some of the best practices that you're seeing with partners?
Yeah, well, you know, what we're predominantly seeing is a big shift from companies using the well-architected best practice for really two business purposes here, right? We're seeing a lot of partners use it for pre-sales, and we're seeing a lot for quality assurance, like maybe with their migrations. As they move an application on AWS, they will then qualify it using the well-architected best practice. That yes, Mr. Customer, we did in fact build this following the rule book. And then when it comes to pre-sales, we're seeing a huge spike in this, predominantly because of the adoption of automation tools in the market right now. So we're seeing really a big spike in how do we then automate the controls? How do we find S3 bucket issues, MFA issues, right sizing, over provisioning issues within seconds, and then taking that information and finding the underlying issues to then have that serviceable monetary SOW conversations that all service partners are after. So those two being built together are really the driving force in why we're seeing a big spike in the last couple of years of our framework being used for more, almost more pre-sales in a way, and a go-to-market perspective. So, yeah.
Pre-sales, Brandon, but I also see it kind of like, as you said, when it's used in kind of like a pre-sale assessment style. But I also see many organizations embedding well-architected into their CI/CD. It's almost become like part of their go, no-go decision. It's embedded. We have several customers who have essentially integrated well-architected framework into their change management process. Well, if you don't meet the certain thresholds for your dev QA deployments, and specifically against well-architected policies, then it's a no-go for staging in production.
Absolutely. Yeah, it serves as a great benchmark for a no-go conversation. Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, definitely those prioritizations, those both pre-sales and change management, all those use cases right there are definitely compelling, right?
Yeah.
And I think to your point, right, we're talking, automation. Obviously, that is a incredibly important opportunity to streamline these reviews. But I kind of want to move over to our next section here of the topic that we're talking about. Then what happens? We have the automation tools up and running. Mikhail, we've talked a lot about that next step being called quantification, and why simply automating might not be enough with some of these reviews. First of all, I'm going to just kick it over to you. What do you mean by quantification, and why is simply automating not enough?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when we are doing well-architected assessments, we are collecting millions of data points, and it's millions of pass fails and okays and not okays. And it's collectively these data points, unless they're presented in a meaningful way, we're not going to be able to drive. We're not going to be able to drive the change. So when I say quantification, it's not just aggregation. A lot of it is contextualization, right? And essentially the way that we're doing this is where the scorecard comes in, is where we're able to take a lot of these data points about compliance policy violations, over provisioning, under provisioning, MTTR for patching, vulnerability scan coverage, remediation time, and put this together in a quantified way that allows IT management and business leadership to contextualize, saying, hey, this is how you're doing on security. This is how you're doing on resiliency. This is how you're doing on FinOps efficiency, so that they can then decide where do they want to put some resources behind. Different businesses will choose to prioritize different things. And this is important when we're using this as a pre-sales tool, because if it's an organization that highly values security, then that's what they're going to address. Say, in a company that's maybe bleeding cash is going to optimize FinOps resources. But that's not just quantification. In the demo, I'll also show contextualization, right? If I just show you some KPI across 100 AWS accounts, that's not very meaningful. What the best practice that we're going for is to contextualize this across lines of businesses, across product lines, across service lines. Basically, we want to present these results along business dimensions or along organizational structure. So it's not uncommon for us to engage with the customer and come up with a well-architected scorecard for each application in the company service catalog, so that it is significantly more meaningful. So basically, quantification is taking millions of data points and grouping them in ways that make sense and contextualizing them with, like, hey, what business is this actually impacting?
So I think you actually beat me to my next question here, which you already covered. How can partners use data to create contextualization? Which is great, because now we're driving efficiency even within our own presentation. So this is great. So, but Brandon, let me kick this over to you, kind of based off of what Mikhail was talking about. And are you seeing partners utilizing this, and some best practices you're seeing in this space as well?
Oh yeah. This is essentially the moneymaker, is what we call it internally. This is how partners take the data and the outputs from technology and automation and quantify it into modernization opportunities, right? Taking a microservice or a monolithic services and going microservices, or essentially we're seeing a lot of how can we take the data to find the underlying issues, right? Why are the EC2s under or over provisioned constantly when there's patching and updates? Maybe that's a conversation to move you to EKS and get you on containers. And so taking the data and then contextualizing it into serviceable opportunities, that is where we're seeing a big spike with our partner ecosystem right now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was going to say that is the moneymaker, and I know in y'all's demo you'll tee that up pretty well, and kind of show the low hanging fruit to help partners out.
Perfect. Well, this is exactly now what you're beating me to the punch on this next question too, right? Is how do partners utilize these quantification, contextualization to scale and drive repeatable business? So you talked about there's obviously one use case right there in terms of being able to analyze this data and drive more opportunities, whether it's for modernization or other services that are able to be deployed right there. Can you talk about some other best practices or examples that this can kind of create that billable, repeatable billable projects for these partners right here? Brandon or Mikhail, I'll leave this up to whoever wants to kick this one off. I want to make sure we cover this.
I can take a first stab at it. I think to me is like, yeah, scale and repeatability are go hand in hand. I think in order to use well-architected review as basically as an engine for business growth, you need to be able to make sure that you can do it scalably from an engineering perspective, that you can come in and within days or hours discover all of your customers' infrastructure, that you're able to integrate with their tool sets that they are using. You're able to demonstrate to the customer, like, hey, this is what this scorecard is going to look like. Your sales staff is trained on how to present this results, and kind of your sales cycle or your sales kind of strategy is centered around basically like, hey, this is how you're doing as an organization across security, resilience, performance. Let the business owners, let your customer decide where they're going to spend the resources to close the gaps. And so I think it's very important to be able to do this in a scalable, repeatable, confident fashion. And that creates repeatability when you're able to come in and do multiple reviews at the same time and engage with customers in a repeatable fashion without disrupting your own organization. So I think that's very important, both from a technology and from a sales perspective.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we see a lot of time, especially in our MSP bucket of partners, building runbooks and SOPs for the the issues discovered from the framework itself. Right? They're essentially mapping the controls that have the high risk issues, and they are putting it out to business outcomes. So when they see these 4 high risk issues in security, the potential underlining path to modernize or to right size, they've got the controls and runbooks all built, so their sales cycles are cut down even more, and also they're helping customers much more efficiently as well, rather than playing guessing games with the C-level, who you really have limited time with these folks. So having that runbook and SOP set internally with the delivery teams and sales teams is a huge part of this as well.
I think another important thing is also setting the real expectations with a customer. I recently was doing an architected review for a customer, and we have a way to measure their basically DevOps maturity. How much of their total assets have been provisioned through CloudFormation, Terraform, autoscaling, or serverless, and I see that like 90% of their infrastructure has been provisioned using none of those tools, basically by hand, using AWS Management Console or like handwritten things. And they're thinking that they're going to go out there and do this major resizing It's very important to be honest with your customers, because if they've created this infrastructure by hand, their resizing efforts are going to be significantly slower. It's redoing it by hand is much slower than, let's say, redeploying a CloudFormation template. That's going to take 5 minutes versus 5 weeks. So that's another important thing is, hey, you set realistic expectations with your customer.
Yeah.
This was great, guys. Very, very insightful, really engaging conversation. I learned quite a bit from this, so thank you. So let's move on to the second part of this this presentation here. Mikhail, I want to hand over the keys to you and let you show the audience a little bit under the hood here of what is Cloudaware and how we work with AWS with these reviews. Maybe just to get started, you want to give, for anyone that's not familiar with us, you can give the quick elevator pitch of who we are, what we do, and then I'll let you share from there.
I really want to get to the demo, but yes, I will spend like 10 seconds. Is essentially Cloudaware is a cloud management platform that is aligned across all pillars of AWS's well-architected framework. At the core of our platform is our CMDB, Cloud Asset Management Platform, and I'll show you why it's important why we started that way. But then we have modules around compliance, observability, FinOps, IT asset management, and vulnerability management. So it's an all-encompassing cloud management platform that works across all pillars of AWS's well-architected framework. Cloudaware is also integrated with a lot of other solutions and other kind of like observability tools, like not just AWS observability, but New Relic and Datadog. We support AWS Inspector, but we're also integrated with Tenable and Qualys. And so that gives us ability to assess and operate in lots of different customer environments.
Awesome.
Okay. Immediately, the scorecard is presented by something like lines of businesses or parent application IDs, or in this case, like lines of businesses. So, because if you're presenting this to your customers, that is how they want to interpret it. Don't give them an architected scorecard, a well-architected scorecard that's grouped by AWS accounts or by AWS organizations, because that's not how they will perceive it. And so that kind of goes back to what I was saying about contextualizing this. And this is where Cloudaware is easy for us to do this, because we are a CMDB platform and we do have a service catalog, and every item is every EC2 instance, every Lambda function, every S3 bucket is mapped to service catalog. So as we notice that there are any kinds of deviations with that object in terms of FinOps policies, security policies, we can instantly then say which business services or which application services are impacted. Kind of want to take a step back and explain how Cloudaware works. Let's go take a look, basically open the hood for you. Cloudaware will, with very first step, when you begin your well-architected assessment with Cloudaware, is you will onboard all of your customers' AWS infrastructure using something like a CloudFormation template. You'll deploy it as a stack set. Cloudaware will go out there and it will discover all of your AWS's infrastructure. We also support things for on-prem like vCenter and on-prem. But one of the things that I want you to see here is how well Cloudaware is integrated with all the other tools. Like we're integrated with like New Relic and Tenable and Qualys and Wiz and Palo Alto and Tanium and Sophos. Question is like, Mikhail, why are you integrating with all of these tools? What's the point of this? Well, the point of this is, if I want to measure your observability, if I want to measure how well you are at, let's say, patching, I need to connect to your Tanium. I need to connect to your SolarWinds. I need to connect to your Sophos to be able to measure those things. And that's one of the things that Cloudaware does quite well, is connect to all of these third-party systems. And once we have connected to those third-party systems, what Cloudaware does is begins to cross-correlate data across multiple systems. So if we go, for example, to a security scorecard, here is a great example of a sort of a vulnerability scorecard. In this particular case, one of the things that Cloudaware does is, let's say you are using AWS Inspector, maybe you're using also Qualys or Tenable, and maybe you also use CrowdStrike or some other, or Rapid7. What Cloudaware will do is it will actually download your AWS inventory, and it will cross-reference it against your customers' vulnerability scanning tools or security tools. And this is where we can now do some kind of levels of assessments. We can say, hey, this is the percentage of your machines that are not scanned at all. This is where we can say, like, hey, this is how fast you're fixing critical vulnerabilities and things like that. And so, for example, if I see that it takes you, that you have significant number of critical vulnerabilities that are over 90 days old, and your internal company guideline says that critical vulnerabilities should be remediated within 30 days, I can now start giving you a scorecard in that space based on how what is your scan coverage, how fast you're remediating critical vulnerabilities and things like that. So I can come up with that scorecard. So that's an example of how our platform does this out of the box. You connect to AWS, and then you begin to connect to Inspector and CloudWatch, but also connect to customers' other tools and things like that. So essentially, that is creates a lot of scalability, right? It doesn't matter if you walk into a customer that has 100 AWS accounts or 1,000 AWS accounts, you will be able to onboard them and discover all of their AWS infrastructure. Cloudaware supports 99% of all AWS services. So whether we go into like databases or we go into like networking and content delivery, essentially Cloudaware will be able to discover everything that your customer has and then assess it against best practices and things like that. Let's go back and take a look at another example. Let's take a look, for example, at FinOps, because I think that's another interesting area. And once again, make sure that you're presenting these results in a way that are meaningful to the customer. So in this particular demo environment, everything is broken down by app ID. And so this allows you to work very closely with business stakeholders and things like that. So in this particular case, Cloudaware evaluates things like Redshift clusters and OpenSearch domains for under and overutilization, and essentially measures for each application how much cost avoidance there is, and based on that, a scorecard is calculated for each application. In this particular case, this is a pretty standard thing. But then let's take a look. Let's say very often an issue that customers come to us is kind of like they're not able to do good cost allocation. Significant amount of money is unattributed to any application because of like missing tags and things like that. And this is where Cloudaware really helps with essentially understanding like, hey, remember I mentioned this being realistic with a customer. this is where you can come in and very quickly get a sense of what is the level of DevOps maturity within this organization. So here I'm looking at, hey, are the resources created by hand or are they automated? And I can see that more than half of their resources are actually automated, and they're using auto scaling, and they're using things like Terraform, and they're using things like CloudFormation to do this. How much are they adopting serverless architecture? And here I can see their maturity in terms of adopting serverless technologies as well. This is important because the second you put together this assessment, you also, the customer is going to be asking you, hey, what is the remediation path and things like that. And like I said, if you're seeing that your customers' DevOps maturity, Brandon mentioned this as well, is basically saying like, hey, what's the root cause, right? Once you find gaps, like for example, you found gap in tagging coverage, like it's very poor. The root cause is probably the fact that things are created by hand and there is a lack of DevOps maturity. So Cloudaware does present you with those results as well. Here is another important aspect, is being able to look at patching maturity of a customer. Like, hey, how are you guys doing on patches? Are patches sitting out there for 30 days, for 60 days, for 90 days? And Cloudaware is able to present that for us. So in this particular case, I can see that a customer is performing they're patching on a regular basis, which is often not the case. But one of the things that I want to stress is in Cloudaware, we offer customizability, right? Because security may mean different things for different people. For example, for some clients, when we assess security, we really look at vulnerabilities. And for other customers, we're looking at more than vulnerabilities. For example, in Cloudaware, we have a compliance engine. And in this compliance engine, we have codified over 300 AWS best practices for how your S3 should be configured, for how your Athena should be configured, and things like that. So, and then for one customer, you may just, if they're very early on, you may just choose saying, hey, I'm just going to look at like, how are they doing on regular vulnerability management? And the more mature customer, you may choose to come up with a scorecard that combines their AWS configuration with the maturity of their vulnerability management. And you can easily do this in Cloudaware because all of these scorecards are built using our Analytics Studio, which allows SIs and MSPs to customize this. Essentially, Cloudaware is not a monolithic product. Basically, take it as is. You could make customizations to this platform for each customer, and you could do your own interpretations for what the performance means, or what the scorecard means, or what the resiliency means, and things like that. Let's just take a look at here is a simple resiliency scorecard where we're looking at like, hey, are we backing up things? Are we replicating things? And here Cloudaware gives us a very nice understanding of where are we with a resiliency and disaster recovery and level of fault tolerance for every single application. Well, in this particular case, in this demo environment, the backup and replication is built entirely on AWS's stack. It does not use external DR BCP tools, but your customer may use an external DR tooling, and the measure of resiliency would be significantly different. And in Cloudaware, you can significantly customize this. Okay, I will start wrapping up the demo and kind of like leave some room for Q&A. But my favorite part about this is contextualization, repeatability, and scalability, where I want you as an SI and MSP to walk into the customer, show this in front of them, saying, this is what you will get at the end. And I'm not just going to assess your AWS infrastructure, I'm going to assess how you manage your AWS infrastructure using AWS tools like CloudWatch and Inspector and GuardDuty. But if you're using other tools like CrowdStrike and Tenable, I will still be able to give you an assessment of your performance and things like that. So I think having that confidence that you can do this repeatably is huge. And the other thing is you are no longer having sales misfires, right? You come in and you push heavy on security while customer really wants to address their resiliency, or you push for performance, but customer is bleeding cash. This way, you take a different sales stance. You're like, hey, this is your scorecard. What do you want to work on? So you're not really kind of pushing anything. You let the customer decide where they want to spend these resources. What I hope you take away from this demo is a Cloudaware should be your go-to engagement tool with a customer. I want you to be able to spin it up, and Jordan will talk about our trial program and what we have for SIs and MSPs, that you can just spin up Cloudaware, add your customer infrastructure to it, and take a look at it. And the last thing before I hand it back to Jordan is building trust. I think the biggest thing for the MSPs is stopping any kind of customer turnover, right? This dashboard is good not only for initial assessment, but it's also good for, there is another dashboard where we can show this historically, saying, hey, we took you from a security of 6, and we took you up to a 9. Essentially, if you're an MSP, you build trust with your customer. They can see what you are delivering to them. They can see the progress you're making, and they don't have to take your word for it. There is a third-party product that basically quantifies the value. And then if you're messing up, then you know it, and you can take action on it. So trust, scalability, repeatability, I think those are all great things that Cloudaware brings to the table. Jordan, give it back to you. I saw some questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Mikhail. This was a great demo, and thank you again, both Mikhail and Brandon, for the insightful conversation. I'm going to take over sharing here again, just so they have. Let's see here.
Jordan, do you mind checking? I think there was a question from the. I saw a question from the participants. So
we had a few questions hop in here. Let me see. So let me, before I get to the questions real quick here, I do want to talk quickly about just sort of next steps, and we'll answer these really quickly for everyone in just a second. So before people drop off, if you are interested in engaging with Cloudaware, and we do work with multiple different types of partners, as Mikhail and Brandon's talked about, whether it's from automation, whether it's data-backed remediation plans, and just generating that continuous pipeline of billable projects, get in contact with us. Go ahead and shoot me an email here, j.spires@cloudaware.com. We know that if you're in the Well-Architected Partner Program, you are required to have an automation tool, use an automation tool at least once. Let us be that free sales tool for you. We typically offer our customers a 30-day trial of using Cloudaware. We will definitely extend that to our partners as well. If you're an MSP, in fact, we'll extend that to 60-day trial for Cloudaware if you want to go ahead and start utilizing this tooling. If you're in the consulting or services space, Again, we can either be that initial pre-sales tool for your team, or if you have a customer, or if you have multiple customers, you want to do that pre-assessment, you want to do any of these remediations, we'll come in, we can work with you on that. Get in contact with us. Again, j.spires@cloudaware.com. If you want to learn more, hit us up on our website, www.cloudaware.com. You can learn more about how we partner with AWS. Okay, let's get into questions here, because I did see a few hop in. Thank you, everyone who put them in. Let me pull them up. Let's see here. Where do I had them open? Now I don't have them anymore. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay.
I see one.
So let's. Yes, we saw. Latoya, you asked, does the platform replace asking the interview questions? I know, Brandon, you chatted briefly amongst this, but so what this does do is it is a way for us to compile these findings for you, so you can just discuss the results directly with the customers. I don't know, Brandon or Mikhail, if you have any more insights on that, or we can hop to the next question.
Does the platform replace asking the interview questions? Yes, you could basically. I mean, you can use the time to ask other questions, but essentially, you don't need to take customers' word for it. You connect their infrastructure and you rely on facts, not word of mouth. That's, I would rather spend that time with the customer talking about, kind of history of how they ended up where they are now.
Yeah, and it also avoids the customer from having to go and check with the IT director, right, for a question. Hey, I have to get back with you. I don't know that question. Well, we have it, ready to go for the first meeting. So your time to value is a lot quicker, hooking it into the account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. All right, next one here. Could you provide information about the pricing of AWS APIs? Is there any agreement with AWS that could help reduce the cost of API calls from Cloudaware to AWS?
Okay, I can take that. So a lot of AWS API calls are free, so there will be no impact to you. Some API calls do cost money, but even for our largest, huge customers of Cloudaware, the amount of money that they spend on API calls as a result of Cloudaware activity is minimal. It's like we're talking about hundreds of dollars, not even thousands. So it is it's basically it's a non-issue. If you're having a problem where your SaaS vendor is generating enough API calls that it shows up on your bill and it concerns you, there is something wrong with that software vendor. Like that should not be the case.
Awesome. One more question. Does this tool auto-populate the answers in the AWS Well-Architected tool as well?
Yes, we are integrated with the Well-Architected platform. So we do have an output integration into Well-Architected framework. You can also integrate it with not just Well-Architected, you can also integrate it with external ticketing systems, with Jira, with ServiceNow, with Rally, and things like that, if you want to convert some of those findings into tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I think that's what we have here. One more question. One that just came in. Do you have a demo of that features? Milestone automation is a key piece.
Of that feature, milestone automation is a key aspect. Do we have automation? Yes. Many things are easily automatable. Like, for example, if your S3 bucket allows unencrypted traffic and you want to disable it, that's an easy thing to automate with very little risk, associated with it. Some things are much more difficult or much riskier to auto remediate, but we do have what we call an auto remediation framework, where you will stand up a remediation server in customer account, make sure it runs under the instance IAM role that's granted to do those things. And then we can then use a AWS Event Bridge and other AWS's like API Gateway to essentially invoke those auto remediations. And you can either use our library of auto remediations, or you can basically pull out from Cloudaware to the remediation server and have your own remediation actions performed. So, is there an auto remediation? 100% there is. And I would encourage you. Mike is asking for this. Mike, just start a trial of the platform, and you can check this out for yourself.
Mike, shoot me an email here. I brought it back up on here for everyone here, and we can schedule a demo for you and talk next steps. So yeah, thanks again. I want to close it off here because we're at time. First of all, thank you, Mikhail and Brandon, for the insightful conversation, and a big thank you to everyone that joined on here. We would love to talk with you more about what you're experiencing. If there's some other challenges that you're facing, we love to talk about this every day. Obviously, we would love to partner with you as well on optimizing and automating all of these reviews as we've talked about, and growing our partnership. Thank you again, everyone, and talk soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Brendan,
Yeah, thanks all.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely, yes. Take care. Bye.
Take care.